Hello decoy carvers, my name is Dave Spear and this is the sixth video in a series that I've done that shows you how to create and modify decoy patterns on your computer using free software. If you haven't watched the first 5 parts of this, it's going to be pretty hard to follow along here because each one of these builds on the previous one. If you have been watching the other 5, go ahead and view in full screen so that you can see everything. And let's get right into creating this head. So I'm going to zoom in. I've already sized the canvas to give us some room up here. And I'm going to get rid of these guides because we're going to end up with a lot of guides. They're going to get confusing. So I go to Image, Guides, Remove All Guides. I'm going to go ahead and create a guide so that the bottom of my top view half is straight. I'm going to create a guide that shows the maximum width of the head from the back all the way to the front of the bill. Zoom in and tweak that a little bit. That's close enough. Let's zoom back out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit B for Bezier and let's start dropping some points. So there's the front of the bill, there's the curve of the bill, the back of the bill will be somewhere there. Got a forecheek, got a jowl, got a section where the thing goes off into the neck, and let's close our path. Okay, looks pretty terrible, but this is just the way I like to work. I like to tweak and move as I go. In fact, I don't like this real estate. Let's make a little more room on the side of the canvas. Let's add 200 pixels, 1349. And it's going the right place. All layers. There, I can scroll over now. Kind of center this in my screen. All right, so according to the Bruce Burke book, the head of a widgeon is 1.8 inches wide. So I've got inches selected down here already. So let's drop a guide. Oops, let's show that. Let's drop a guide that's half of 1.8 inches, or basically 0.9 inches. I hold the control key while I'm measuring, so I get straight up and down. Go to 0.9 inches, 0.9, control click, there's my guide. That's where my jowl is going to go. Now, the other measurement I took out of his book is I took a pair of calipers and I measured the width of the bill. Now, I did that in millimeters because it was a little easier to see. So if I change my measurement now to millimeters, it's not going to screw anything up. It's just going to show it's just going to change what I see. And if I measure up from the bill and go half of 18 millimeters or 9 millimeters, looks like I'm getting 9.2. That's all right. Control click. There's my guide. Okay, now I can switch back to the Bezier tool. And that's as wide as my bill needs to be. My jowl needs to be, oops, Control Z. My jowl needs to be that wide. And let's throw a guide down for where the jowl needs to be. It looks like the wide point of the head is right here. So B for going back to the Bezier tool. Let's move the jowl right there. And let's make sure, since that's the widest point of the head, let's make sure that curve goes underneath. And we're going to put the neck here about 1/3 of the way back between the jowl and the back of the head and sort of fix that curve. So that's mostly where it needs to be. Probably needs to be a little wider though. Oops, Control Z, hit this guy and just, there we go. All right, so this bill is obviously not in the right place and neither is in the forecheek. So let's drop a couple of guides. Let's zoom in a little bit on our side profile here. We already know it's life size, so we can do relative matching now. If we drag a guide right to the tip of this horn, we can put that bill right where we need it to be. And if we drag another guide right over the pupil, we can put the forecheek where it needs to be. So let's go back up here, hit B. Let's move my forecheek to where the eye is. Let's move the bill back to where the bill is. Let's fix the curve on the bill. And a widgeon, a widgeon's bill tapers a little bit towards the front. So we know the max width is back here, but let's go ahead and drag this node down just a little bit and sort of taper that bill. Control Z, accidentally dropped a node I didn't want there. Okay, now according to Richard Lemaster, you should be able to draw a straight line from the jowl to the bill roughly. And I've noticed that the forecheek does poke out from that a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I got the right handle here. And I'm going to just go ahead and let the forecheek poke out just a little bit. I'm going to show you one more thing with these handles. If you click back on the jowl here, let's zoom in a little bit so you can see what's happening. If I have a curve here and it's not the kind of curve I want for the jowl. Sometimes this doesn't always work depending on if your curve's a straight outside curve or it's going from an outside to an inside. But sometimes you can hit the shift key and grab one of these handles and it'll move both of them. It's called move handles symmetrically, and you can move them both at the same time. And a lot of times that will smooth out your curve. So let's leave that the way it is. Let's, I don't like it. Let's do this. There we go. That's a little bit more lifelike. Now we've got the forecheek. In fact, the forecheek doesn't have nearly that big of an indentation. So let's fix that a little bit. There we go. Make that jowl nice and smooth coming forward. All right. So we've basically got a top view now that matches our side profile, but of course we need to figure out where to put the crown and the eye and everything else. So let's create an eye. So I'm going to move this path down here and name it head top outline. I'm going to copy this head side profile, copy path, and do I'll just right click on it and say duplicate path. And I'm going to rename this head top profile. And I'm going to keep all the top profile stuff under this line. So let's go ahead now and create the culmen. Now we know the culmen is halfway, the width of the culmen is halfway the width of the bill here. So that was 9 millimeters. We need to go ahead and drop another guide that is half of 9 millimeters. I think it was 9 millimeters. Yep, 9. So 4.5, 4.6, close enough. And then I'm going to drop a guide on the side view from where the culmen goes from being flat to curved, and it's right about there, even though my line isn't perfect here. So I know now that I can create a culmen from this point. Oh, it's trying to drop, because this is so close to this line, it's trying to drop a node on there. So every once in a while with these paths, instead of just clicking, it'll create a new one. Sometimes you need to click the new path button. Let's just call this culmen. Now let's see if we can drop a line there and a line there. And we did. So there's our culmen width. That's going to help us with the crown. So let's go ahead and create an eye now. And we'll drag a guide on either side of this eye to make sure we get it the right width. Hit the B button. Let's create a new eye. We're going to put it roughly where the width of the bill is. Let's close this path. Shift to deselect. Close the path there. All right, so that looks roughly about the right shape. Now, the eye needs to be at least as wide as where the bill matches the cheek, or wider. It can't be skinnier. But we also know from Richard Lemaster, Anatomy Axioms, that the eyes have to be angled at such a point as where the sight line crosses the bill. So I'm going to create a first let's name this eye. I'm going to create a new reference line, and I'm just going to drag it. Oops, I don't want to drag it. I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to click here. Now, right there at the width of the pupil, from there to there, that's where we want to angle the eye. So let's view the eye. It's not showing. Let's just call this sight line. Okay, so now we've got this eye. I'm going to show you how to use the rotate tool to match that curve up there. And let's make this eye just a little more symmetrical first. Okay, so we have the eye selected. We're going to go to the rotate tool, which is these two squares with the arrows. And you can rotate layers or paths. We want to rotate this path, so I'll click on the path and I will just rotate it. Now, I'm going to have to move it too, obviously, because it's going to rotate way down here, but I'm trying to match that angle more or less. So I hit rotate. I hit M to move it. I'm going to move the active path and I'm put it right there. I'll go ahead and rotate it again to match that line. Rotate and move. That's close enough for this demonstration. So now we know the eye is where it needs to be. So let's hide this sight line. I can leave it there if I want, or I could delete it. I'll just leave it there for now. So we know where the eye needs to be. We know what angle it needs to be. We know where the culmen is. Now we need one more measurement, which is where the crown ends on top of the bill. We need one more guide right there, and that will help us draw the crown. So if we hit B and start a new deal here, we can, oh, it doesn't want to, it wants to grab that other one again, so let's create a new one called crown, a new path called crown. So let's hit drop a point there, and let's drop a point back here somewhere. Now we can basically drag that crown so it matches right at the culmen. This is not wide enough back here. So let's make this a little wider. And more or less, that is our crown. It is wanting to go outside the eye, so I've probably got it too wide. Of course, you could measure that. It's supposed to be something like 50% or 70% of the width. But anyway, for our purposes, there it is. There's the crown. So now we've got the crown, we've got the culmen, we've got basically everything we need here. There's one little line here that usually shows on the top profile. I'll go ahead and put it in, although it's not really important to your carving. And that's the line that basically follows the curve from the top of the horn here to around the cheek. So the cheek puffs out over the bill. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to create a new one called bill cheek transition. And it's gonna follow these guidelines, the horn and the cheek. Let's create a new guideline for the cheek. And this is why a couple of videos ago I made this cheek stick out farther than it does in real life, just so that I could actually do this, because I've created this pattern before and it's hard if you don't. So hit B. Well, it's all right. Now anytime, even though I've created a new path here, because I'm so close to that other path for the head outline and we have snap to guides, it wants to just grab it. So let's go back. It's selected the head top outline. Let's go back to our build cheek transition path, and don't drop the dot there. Let's just drop it on the line, and let's drop another one on the line. Now that they're on the line and we've got the right thing selected, we can just snap it to those two spots. And now we can grab this angle, now we can grab these handles. See, it doesn't want to let me grab the handles because I'm snapping to guides. When this happens and you get really tight, go to your view menu, unselect snap to guides, and now it's not going to try to do that to you all the time. So let's create the rest of the forecheek, the front of the forecheek. Now that we've done that, we can sort of modify the by going to the outline, we can sort of modify that. Deselected that. We can sort of modify that forecheek now to sort of match that line. And that is essentially, let me hide all my guides, Control-Shift-T. Let's fix this crown because it ain't really right. But this is essentially how you can create a top view from a side view if you know a few things about anatomy. You know that the jowl has to be so wide at a certain point. You know that the culmen's half the width of the bill. There's things you know. So there it is. If you've stuck around this far, we've actually created a full top and side profile of both the head and the body of this duck, and we could print this out now and we could start carving